Hi, I'm John Byrne with Poets&Quants. I'm here for a one-on-one interview with Sean Meehan. He's the Dean of the MBA program at IMD in Switzerland. Welcome.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
So, a lot of people might not really know IMD that well, particularly in North America. It's a school that originally started in the 1950s with executive education and then launched the actual full-time program for MBAs in the 1970s, right? How is the MBA program different from what most people might expect elsewhere?
First of all, it's a one-year program, and it has one section, 90 students. The average age is 30 and a half. 75% of our students are aged between 28 and 32.
Uh-huh.
They have some experience. About half, maybe 40% come from manufacturing industry, FMCG. About 20% come from consulting, and the rest from financial services and other. They come from all around the world. It's highly diverse. It's probably the most diverse program we think of any. So take any section anywhere. We have last year we had 43 nationalities represented.
Wow, among 90 students?
Among 90 students.
Wow.
And this year we have 39 represented.
Right.
And 32 countries of residence. They are genuinely, when we say they're Chinese, they are actually Chinese. They're not Chinese parents. And so on. So I think all of those things together are important sort of structural components. It's like any of these one-year programs, there's a lot to fit in, therefore it's intense. And it's intense, but it is a very, very sensitive program. So we are trying to develop people. We're in the business of leadership development. And that's the critical thing I'd like people to focus on. We exist to foster leadership and to cultivate the leadership ambitions of young students.
And most of your students have already led people too, right?
Yeah, because they have that experience already. We're looking, in the admission process, we're looking for people who have demonstrated already that they have the appetite to take responsibility. Leadership is about taking a lot of responsibility, and it's not about having the big job and the big car. It's really about taking responsibility for moving organizations, for moving people, for caring for them, and bringing that organization or that team or group of people to a new position and readying them for, in most cases, uncertain futures. And we need to find people who can deal with those situations, deal with ambiguity, deal with pressure, and have demonstrated some of that. So we look for that experience before we admit them into the program, before they're ready for that. And it's not a question of age maturity. It's a question of, I think, miles on the road. Have you seen enough to realize why what we're doing is important?
And is there an IMD approach to leadership development?
Yeah, I'd say very much so. So we, first of all, the program is about 30% experiential. In all the experiential activities we assign coaches across. It doesn't matter what the activity is. We had an innovation week, for example, 1 week immersion on innovation. And we had leadership coaches present during that week to watch how the teams worked. Those are coaches that work with with different configurations of people in teams from the start of the year, so they really understand their group, this particular group's dynamics, and they give them a lot of feedback on how they contributed, what they thought they were doing, what they were actually doing, how it was perceived in the heat of the moment. So we have so many different contexts for examining leadership behavior and team participation behavior. We do it clinically with qualified and experienced people. We give feedback. We expect the people, our participants, to have used that feedback. They work on leadership papers. In addition, on top of all of this explicit leadership development material, sessions and feedback on activities, we have, in parallel to the course, something we call the personal development elective. We have personal development analysts who are Jungian analysts who work with the students one-on-one. Every student can work with an analyst for 25 sessions a year, 45-minute sessions.
And you use the word analyst. Does that mean therapist?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I think leader know thyself. You really need to understand what your triggers are, why you behave the way you do, and it's not all explainable in the context of what's going on in the moment in business. Usually your behavior is rooted deeply somewhere.
Yes.
Biases are being created, routines are being created, reactions are being created, tendencies exist for reasons. And unless you can understand where these come from, it's hard to deal with situations and see them coming. And I think one of the challenges of a leader is, a leader will be under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of pressure, and will have a lot of opposition to deal with. And unless one can really see the possibility for explosions or triggers or events, then one can't prepare for them, one can't avert them, one can't diffuse them ahead of time. And great leaders manage to do that. We observe that in good leadership. We also observe that, people have complex motivations. Everyone has something different that they're obsessed with or interested in, and they need time and space to explore that for them.
Right.
And this is one of the most important formative years of their development as a leader, if they're going to make it. And we would like to afford them the opportunity for reflection, for safe discussion. This point about safe discussion is important. I don't know any of the analysts personally. If I met them on the street in Lausanne, I wouldn't recognize them. Wow. I do not know. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I know the person who hires them and who checks in with them. If there are issues, that person will come to me, we'll talk, but everything is private, it's safe space. Wow. Like it would be with an analyst.
So it sounds like there's a lot of emphasis on personal development.
Yes.
And if you had to separate, basics like accounting, finance, strategy, marketing, to the personal development side, how much personal development is there in this MBA program versus those basics?
Yeah. Look, I'm inclined to say to you, it's all personal development. And I have said, and I'm on the record as saying, it is a leadership development program,
right?
During which you earn an MBA. So, and it basically is, you need to be able to do this stuff. You need to be on top of this stuff. You need to master it. You need to have confidence in dealing with it. But when the board of Exxon is sitting down to promote its next head of marketing, its next head of EMEA, they're not asking themselves who's the best accountant at the table.
No. Or
best operations guy, or best marketing, or best strategy. They expect all of that stuff. So from my point of view, when you really look ahead, if your objective is to help the students get the very best next job, I think this might not be the absolute best program. If the objective is to get you to where society needs great people to be in 8 years' time from the date of the program, then it's the right program. Right. Because by then, they're really, companies are assessing your ability to move a team, to move people, to work with complexity. It's not about your technical ability. That, at this point in their careers, that's not how you separate wheat from chaff. They do a full course in accounting, marketing, operations, strategy, finance, entrepreneurship, the things you would expect. Business and society is a thing we put a lot of emphasis on. I would bring it in under the leadership stream. That's how I think of it. But the rest, I think you would expect. And so, the hours, it might be 40% of the student's time on the classic MBA curriculum, and 60% on the rest. This is slightly convoluted because we have our big block of ICP project, entrepreneurship project, discovery expedition of 2 weeks, immersion on digital for 1 week, immersion on innovation for another week. You have to take those to the side. Of the rest, I would say it's 40%.
And when you ask graduates what the highlights of the program are for them, what do they typically name?
Yeah. The personal development elective.
Oh, they do? Okay, there you go.
And the leadership stream.
Interesting.
They also, I think what they will say is the work that they did in the teams, usually the very first team that they worked with you know, at 4 o'clock in the morning, and just trying to get the next deadline out of the way in the heat of that first difficult module that they do.
And that's an important part of the bonding experience, I imagine.
Yeah.
I imagine with only 90 students, and they're special students too. I mean, they're not just ordinary MBA students, given not only the greater experience, but your admissions process, which we can talk a little bit about as well. That those bonds have to really be tight, I think.
Yeah, you know, in 90 people, you're going to meet people who will be friends with you for the rest of your life. You'll meet great people, and you'll recognize great expertise, and you know who's the go-to person for X, Y, or Z. You know, the first time I ran the MBA program was in 2002. That class still has an active social media group where they seek advice, concrete advice. I've got a meeting next week. These are the issues. I'm not 100% sure about X, Y, and Z. Can anyone guide me to X?
Right.
And they use that. So there's the friendship side, but then there's the practical support side and brotherhood that they have, which I think is a nice thing. It is an important bonding experience, and you'll have that in many MBA programs, and it takes different forms. I think by the end of the program, you know who you really want to spend time with. That's a great thing.
And in your admissions process, you really get to know the candidates.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit different than a typical MBA admissions procedure, right?
We like to, we have 2 entry tracks. In the main entry track that accounts for more than 90% of the admitted students, we spend a day with them. We ask them to come to Lausanne. We run a few of those off away from Lausanne in Singapore and elsewhere. And we put them through case presentation, impromptu case work, group work, and then individual interview and individual presentations. And we feel we've got the measure of someone then. It's very important for us.
It's much more involved than a typical MBA admissions process then.
Mainly because we're going to spend so much time. You know, we have 45 faculty, we have 90 students.
Wow.
We're going to spend a lot of time with these people. We want to identify people for whom we know we can make a difference, and who we feel will respond to what we're trying to achieve with them. I don't think we could do that by just reviewing the papers, reviewing the references, looking at the GMAT. It's just not enough.
Yeah. Are your students looking to achieve certain things that might be different than a traditional MBA student?
I don't think so. I think
so many are using the MBA to switch careers?
Many are.
Yeah.
Yeah, many are. We have many triple switchers. So they'll switch geographies, functions, and industries. And they do that rather successfully. Mm-hmm. The recruiters are content with that. That works. But, you know, we don't see that as why we exist. You know, that's not something that we design around.
Right.
Rather, it's this leadership piece. We're constantly looking for people who want to tackle big subjects and are really concerned. The benchmark for short-term success for us is, will you get appointed to a senior position, a position with clear, meaningful responsibility, where you've become a go-to person in your organization, meaning if there's a merger going on, a prospective merger, then somebody will pull you aside. Even if you're not on that team, they'll say, you know, this is in the works,
right.
Need your input. What do you think? When we go to implementation, this is how it would be effective. Can you give some input on that? Big decisions are not going to get made with you being in the dark on them. So to us, that means you have arrived in a position of meaningful responsibility in your employer company. And we think that needs to happen by 38. If you leave at 31 and a half, you need to be in that position 7 or 8 years later. Mm-hmm. Because those are the moments when you're being really tested for the big jobs, the C-suite, and the CEO position,
Yeah.
which, if you're successful, you'll find yourself in your early 40s.
Yeah.
So, given that you need to have made it to that testing ground,
Mm-hmm.
all of our focus is on that period, not on what happens when you're 58, 48, or 42. We focus on that. So we ask ourselves, how's the world going to be different? What does leadership mean in 8 years' time? Who knows, right? I mean, it's we can't predict. So much goes on, but we can say with reasonable certainty, technology has changed everything. It's going to continue to have the tidal wave effect that it has had so far in the last few years. Digitalisation will increase in its pace and go into places that we don't fully understand yet. So therefore you need to be very savvy and capable of handling those discussions, that environment, and need to be savvy about what it means for an organization to be successful in that environment. So be more entrepreneurial, be more agile as an organization, be a leader that can handle that entrepreneurial style in a large formal organization. So digitalization, entrepreneurship are critical pillars, and globalization.
Right.
You know, for all of the politics that go on these days and the rhetoric that we are enduring in the media, fine, but businesses will find a way.
Yes.
Businesses will deal with this one way or the other. They're very adept at coping with the politics of it and the practicalities of it. Business will continue to be global, and it will be increasingly global, I imagine, because infrastructurally it's already gone that way. It's actually pretty hard to decouple what is now being coupled.
Yeah, there's that phrase, once the genie is out of the bottle, you don't put the genie back in.
That's it, yeah. So we think that students who come to us should be looking for that future. And we're not obsessed with, preparing you for the consulting interview.
Right. And now you're in the Bay Area right now,
Yeah.
and you're on one of your immersion tours,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Explain what the students will be experiencing in the Bay Area.
Right. So we call it our Discovery Expedition, and it's a 2-week tour away from IMD. We've chosen this year to visit cities, some of the many cities that are very important in the development and implementation of tech around the world. We visit the Bay Area, Silicon Valley and San Francisco, Shenzhen in China, and Dublin for the European dimension. These are locations that have some of the world's biggest and most significant players in tech, the big platforms, some of the really interesting emerging technologies and companies in China. And here in Silicon Valley, some of the great success stories. Today, our students are at Salesforce, a hot property in the tech world, doing really well, very interesting. We have some alumni who've been very successful there who are hosting us. We'll meet some venture capitalists during the day. We'll meet some other alumni from the different companies around that are in the Waymo and ExoJet, some of the cool companies that are around the place. We'll visit other companies tomorrow and the next day. The idea is to visit companies that are engaged in big data, AI, AR, and to just meet with those senior executives, find out what they're working on next, where they think the industry's going, and what they look for in talent and people and competition, just to give the students a better sense, allow Q&A.
And this is the entire class of 90 students.
Yeah,
wow.
Sure, yeah.
That's a big trip to organize.
We flew yesterday from Switzerland and arrived at various moments because they weren't all on the same flight. And this is the life of an executive. I mean, it's kind of it's a little bit of a novelty for students maybe, but most of these guys already have done this, and you just got to keep going for 2 weeks, and you have the summer to rest.
Right. So, there's a lot of discussion about the future of the MBA, the value of the degree, the declining applications, particularly in 2-year full-time programs. What's your view on all that?
What what this says, if you take the perspective of an analyst looking in, there's something wrong in the industry if that is so. So the industry is probably in need of more innovation and renovation, and I imagine it will see it. I think the industry is strong. There's strong players. They're well financed. They're smart people, and and very active stakeholder groups. And I imagine these schools will individually and therefore collectively respond. Unfortunately, I think our industry is cursed by the lack of speed, and that's a little bit of an advantage for us. We're a private foundation. We don't report to a board of governors at a university. We're not slowed down by a lot of some of the constraints I think that other business schools work under. But we're a little bit smaller. We probably have fewer resources, but we think we're pretty agile, nimble, and I think we go through. We try to avoid massive redesigns,
right?
Because we really do. There's no 2 years that are the same.
Yeah.
First thing I tell the students is, you're going to have a unique experience, and the main reason you're having a unique experience is you. You're the only ones doing this year. So when you talk to the guys last year, that was their experience, and they made it that. So you can make it what you want. But we do change so many of the components within.
Right.
The content within the component blocks changes absolutely constantly, and we think that probably happens more with us than many schools actually, as we observe. So watch that space. We see the signals. We've done really well on the whole application front. Our applications last year were up 60%. This year, so far, up 50%.
Really?
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
It's the work. It's the product of a lot of work, right? Yeah. So you go into the market, you articulate a story, you market very clearly and consistently on a theme, and you find that there are the people who are interested. We have 90 students. We only have 90 places. I don't need to have 900 applications.
No, you don't.
I need a choice. And I think, I'm a marketing specialist. The clearer you are with your value proposition, the more clearly you can signal your value proposition, I think the less noise you have to deal with in the system. That's probably true. Have people they know that's something that really could be interesting for me. I'm going to investigate further. We make ourselves available for all of those calls, and we attend the fairs, and by the time it comes to applications, we think people are pretty serious.
Yeah.
There's a real fee, and they have to come to Lausanne, so they fly from Asia to Lausanne. They spend a day with us. It takes them a week. That costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we know they're serious.
Yeah. And
we owe them a duty of care not to invite them unless we're serious about them too. But we only have 90 places. It's competitive.
So what's next for IMD in the MBA program? Are there things that you already have sort of in your sights that you'd like to see evolve, or what?
I think the vision I gave you of, where do we need to be in 8 years' time? That's a question we torture ourselves with every single year. What does that horizon look like? That changing horizon look like all the time? And tours like this enable me to get a better sense from these prospective recruiting companies,
right?
What they're interested in, where they're going. At IMD, we have a huge focus on industry because we came from industry. We were founded by industry.
And most of your faculty are consultants as well, right?
Sure. Yeah. We work very closely with our clients. We advise the C-suites of these companies.
So does that make your instruction more practical and less academic, or not?
We're all trained academics with our PhD. We value the publishing process, and so without dissing that at all,
right?
We are like most tenured faculty in all the other schools. We spend a lot of time working with companies, and we bring that into the classrooms with us, and we bring them into the classrooms with us. We have a colossal number of our our clients come visit, speak about their live cases, get feedback from the clients, from the students, get input from the students. And we have this consulting project thing where we have 15 clients who show up every year with a real problem to solve. My client last year was a traditional industrial company, and my 5 students, one went to work for McKinsey, one BCG, one Bain, and one of the other companies. And the other went back to their own sponsoring company.
Right.
I went to the client afterwards and said, you realize what just happened here. You got that for 85 grand and you paid 150 at least.
A bargain.
So you got a bargain.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a very, what the heck use is academia if you don't apply it to something? We're
That's
applied, and an MBA is an applied degree. It's not an academic endeavor for the students.
Yes.
But they need to understand where what you're saying comes from, the validity of it, the generalizability of it. And that's very important. That's where our training comes in, and we marry these worlds.
So what's your best advice for someone who's interested in going for an MBA at IMD?
Yeah. Understand why, and be clear on your appetite for leadership. Understand where that comes from, who you've admired in the past, why, and if you're attracted by the glamour, the fame and the glory, then keep looking and try to understand a little bit better.
Go somewhere else.
Well, no, I think to do them a good service, you probably need to work harder on understanding what this is really like,
Right.
and why it really matters.
Yeah.
And when we can feel that passion and that excitement and that craving for learning and appetite for that career, that vocation, when we can see that vocation, you've got a tremendous chance. But you should be able to see it in yourself first. We shouldn't be discovering it with you. You need to convey it to us as best you can. We would like you to have a great GMAT, great test scores, because we want you to do well. We don't want you to be struggling with what we consider the basics.
Right.
All those subjects you mentioned.
Indeed.
We've no time for that.
Right.
We just expect you to breeze through that. So prepare well for that. Take GMAT seriously. It will stand you in good stead when you then come to do the subjects in the program. Talk to our alumni. They're really a great bunch. There's loads all over the world because they come from all over the world. They go back to all over the world, and sell. It's a sales process.
Indeed. Sean, thank you so much.
A great pleasure. Thank you, John.
Great pleasure
to be
for
here.
me.
Thank you.
And this is John Byrne with Poets&Quants. Thanks for watching.